There's a smell that travels through time. It's the rich aroma of a roasting turkey, the sweet scent of cinnamon and pumpkin, and the savory hint of sage stuffing. It is the undeniable, unforgettable smell of Thanksgiving. Today, our Thanksgiving might involve pre-ordered meals, instant side dishes, and a dozen different screens lighting up the house. We value convenience, a shortcut to the finish line in a world that never seems to slow down. But if we journey back to the 1960s, Thanksgiving was a different kind of event. It wasn't about convenience. It was about the process. It was an all-hands-on-deck, multi-day affair that filled the house with warmth, a joyful chaos, and the unforgettable sounds and smells of a true family feast. Join us as we pull up a chair to the dining room table of the past and rediscover the magic of a 1960s Thanksgiving. Number 1. The preparation ritual. The 1960s Thanksgiving didn't start on Thursday morning with the buzz of an alarm clock. It began on Monday or Tuesday with the big shop. This was a major expedition to the local grocery store, armed with a handwritten list from Mom, detailing every ingredient for a dozen different recipes, many of which only saw the light of day once a year. The real work began on Wednesday. This was baking day. The kitchen, the undisputed command center of the operation, would be filled with the sweet aroma of pies. Pumpkin, apple, pecan, and for many, the classic mincemeat pie were all baked from scratch. The process of making the pie crust-cutting cold butter into flour until it was just right was a skill passed down through generations. The finished pies would be set on the windowsill to cool, a beautiful, edible promise of the feast to come. Wednesday night was for chopping and prepping. Onions, celery, and carrots for the stuffing were meticulously diced. Potatoes were peeled and left to sit in cold water. It was a day of patient, loving preparation, setting the stage for the main event. Number 2. The star of the show. The undisputed king of the Thanksgiving table was the turkey, and in the 1960s, preparing it was a true labor of love, often beginning before dawn. There were no pop-up timers or pre-brined, pre-seasoned birds. The massive turkey, often sourced from a local butcher and weighing 20 pounds or more, would be rinsed, patted dry, and generously rubbed with butter and seasoned simply with salt and pepper. The stuffing, a savory mix of dried bread, sausage, vegetables, and sage, was made in a giant bowl and packed carefully into the bird. This was the secret to a moist and flavorful turkey, and every family had their own non-negotiable recipe, a source of immense pride and friendly debate. It would go into the oven early on Thursday morning, roasting for what felt like an eternity, slowly turning a beautiful golden brown. The process of basting the turkey every 30 minutes was a sacred duty, filling the entire house with that iconic, mouth-watering Thanksgiving aroma that could wake even the sleepiest teenager. Number 3. The classic side dishes. The turkey may have been the star, but the side dishes were the heart of the meal, and the 1960s had a very specific and now classic lineup. Mashed potatoes were made from real peeled potatoes, boiled until tender, and then whipped with butter and cream until they were impossibly fluffy and smooth. The gravy was an art form, made in the roasting pan itself from the rich, caramelized pan drippings, a little flour, and some broth knocked from a jar or a packet. Cranberry sauce often came from a can, sliding out with a satisfying plop and retaining the shape of the can's ridges. It was then carefully sliced into perfect, ruby red circles and arranged on a special dish. And then there was the icon of the mid-century table, the green bean casserole. A comforting, creamy mix of canned green beans, Campbell's cream of mushroom soup, and topped with those crunchy French's fried onions. It was a beloved and expected staple on nearly every Thanksgiving table in America. Number 4. The family gathering. As the turkey roasted, the family would arrive. Cars would line the street as grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins poured into the house, bringing with them a joyful chaos of greetings, hugs, and their own signature dishes to share. Perhaps a Jell-O mold salad shimmering with suspended fruit, or a sweet potato casserole topped with marshmallows. The adults would gather in the living room, sharing stories and catching up, the sound of their laughter mixing with the tinny murmur of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade on the black and white television. The kids, dressed in their uncomfortable Sunday best, would be ushered outside to play, their pent-up energy too great to be contained indoors. A game of touch football on the front lawn was a classic Thanksgiving tradition, a way to build up an appetite and burn off excitement before the feast to come. This was a time before smartphones. The focus of the day was entirely on each other, on the simple, undivided pleasure of being together under one roof. Number 5. The kids' table. For many, a core memory of a 1960s. Thanksgiving was being relegated to the kids' table. This was often a wobbly card table set up in a corner of the dining room, or even in the kitchen. It was a world of its own, free from the boring conversations of the adults. Here, the rules were different. Milk was spilled, peas were flicked, and secret alliances were formed between cousins. It was a place of giggles, whispers, and the occasional argument over who got the bigger drumstick. Being promoted to the adult table was a major rite of passage, a sign that you were finally growing up. But for a few precious years, the kids' table was the best seat in the house. Number 6. The dinner table. The call to dinner was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The dining room table, often extended with extra leaves and covered in a starched linen tablecloth, was set with the good china and polished silverware that was only used for special occasions. The perfectly roasted turkey would be presented whole on a large platter, a masterpiece for all to see before Dad would take on the ceremonial and often stressful role of carving. Plates would be passed down the long table, each one piled high, a colorful mosaic of turkey, stuffing, potatoes, and casseroles. It was a feast for the eyes as much as the stomach. The conversation around the table was the soundtrack of the holiday, a mix of family stories, good-natured teasing, and expressions of gratitude. It was the moment when the rush of preparation finally settled into the warm, contented hum of a family sharing a meal. Number 7. The post-dinner rituals. After the last slice of pie was eaten, and the adults were relaxing with cups of percolated coffee, the day was far from over. The men would often retreat to the living room to watch football, the drone of the announcer's voice filling the house as the inevitable tryptophan-induced nap descended upon the armchairs. Meanwhile, the women would tackle the mountain of dishes. This wasn't a chore done in silence. It was a continuation of the social event. It was a time for conversation and connection, as stories were shared and recipes were exchanged over the kitchen sink. And finally, the Tupperware would come out. Leftovers were carefully packed for guests to take home, ensuring the taste of Thanksgiving would last for days, to come in the form of cold turkey sandwiches. The Thanksgiving of the 1960s was more than just a meal. It was a performance, a ritual, a full day, or even a full week dedicated to the creation and celebration of family. We've gained convenience in our modern holidays, but in our rush, Perhaps we've lost the slow, deliberate joy of the process, the multi-day build-up, the shared tasks, and the undivided attention that came from a day with only one thing on the agenda: being together. It was a tradition built on love, labor, and a whole lot of butter, preserved forever in America's past. What was the one dish that always had to be on your family's Thanksgiving table? Share your traditions in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this trip back in time, be sure to like this video and subscribe to RetroStates.